Hi, I'm Cristina Smith, creator, along with my brilliant brother, puzzle master Rick Smith, of the award-winning best-selling Yoga for the Brain series of profound philosophy and extraordinarily fun puzzle books. We are celebrating the release of our fifth book in the Yoga for the Brain series, Inspired Wisdom Word Search Yoga for the Brain, celebrating by hanging out with some of our 60 contributing authors, plus number 61, Dave Farrow, who contributed the foreword to Inspired Wisdom Word Search. Hi, Dave.
I'm sorry. I was so enthralled with this book. I was just doing a word search. I completely, time just passed by. It's wonderful to see you. You know, this book is amazing. It really is.
Well, thank you. Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're pretty darn amazing yourself.
No, well, first of all, I'm a big lover of just puzzles in general. In fact, I actually had a puzzle metaphor in my wedding vows. That's verifiable. I said my wife is like the blue sky pieces in a big puzzle set. Very frustrating, very difficult, and it's hard to tell them apart. It's the most difficult part of the puzzle to solve, but once you do, man, it's the most beautiful thing you'll ever see.
Wow, that's beautiful.
She loved that metaphor, by the way. She loves that sort of humor too. But yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm kind of known for my brain. I'm in the Guinness Book of Records twice for my memory, and I'm also very high IQ. And I do brain teasers and brain hacks for a living. I'm one of the original brain hackers. I have a international best-selling program on speed learning, which has essentially lessons on how to overcome things like ADHD and dyslexia, which I had to overcome to really maximize your gray power. And we do a lot of that on brainhackers.com as well. And I have got a lot of contributors to that as well, including yourself. And we really like to share the content because I learned early on that your brain is a very powerful tool, but it's not really so much what you're born with. Certainly we have some advantages. Some people are smarter than others. Everybody has a tendency towards one direction. But man, the real successes in life, it's more about what they do with their gray matter, how they train it, how they use it, and how they practice it. And books like this are right in that category.
Yeah, and I really ascribe to the multiple intelligences model where, there's mechanical brilliance as well as mathematical brilliance, right?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, probably one of the best examples of that I remember is reading a bio. I've read a lot of biographies, and the bio for Einstein. I suggest anybody read bios for him because, as brilliant as he was, there was actually one period of time where Israel was in its early stages being created, and they considered him to kind of be head of state because he was one of the most famous Jewish people in the world and everything. And like 5 minutes looking at him, they knew he was not politician material. It was just, but obviously incredibly brilliant when it comes to physics, but there's a different type of intelligence that was needed in that case. And of course, he was a great advocate for peace and all that, but it was mostly like, quotes that you take out of context. The whole politicianing was its own intelligence. And I think that's a metaphor for everything. I think everybody out there has talents that they're not fully using and utilizing.
Yeah, like I like to say, everybody knows more about something than I do. And I always enjoy finding out what they know more about, because then I learn something. And it's always a good day when I learn something.
Well, and also on top of that, one of my favorite things is the late bloomers. When I was in junior high, I was not considered the smart kid. I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, and it was a real thing. It wasn't like I was getting straight A's and these were just kind of odd little anomalies. I was getting horrible grades. A lot of it also had to do with anxiety around test taking, I found out later on. But basically, long story short, when I figured out my brain, all of a sudden my performance went through the roof. Well, I always was that smart, but I was underperforming my potential. How many people in this world can probably relate to that statement?
Oh yeah, definitely. And we sell ourselves shorter than everyone else will. So a lot of it comes back down to us and
Mhm.
believing in ourselves to start with.
Yeah, that's what actually I love about this the word searches and your other ones as well. I was looking at I love like the term yoga for the brain. Obviously, it's a great marketing tool. Anybody who looks me up, you know, I also run a PR and marketing firm, Farrow Communications. So really well marketed. If you want to learn something about marketing, you know, emulate this. But more than that though, I feel like you're trying to do something important with this that you wouldn't normally see in a word search or crossword or any sort of puzzle game. Whereas you're trying to introduce the reader to something they may not have experienced before, make them think about concepts, even philosophy and ideas, even just knowing the terminology for these things. It's much more than just you know, spending your time doing puzzles to pass the time. It's a pleasurable activity, but you've got that extra added aspect of the energy and spirituality to it.
Well, yeah, my philosophy is to help people get more health and happiness through the power of positive play. Because if it's fun, that's good, right? And we don't have
Yeah,
had
absolutely.
so much fun in our lives, right?
You know, and I'd also actually I started to play this with my son Lex, and he's 5 years old. And I didn't realize how much a word search can actually be a really good game for kids. I always thought this is, you know, like I mean, what's the primary demographic for those puzzle books? Is there, you know, people 50 plus, I bet, you know, or something like that. So it didn't dawn on me, but you know, he loves games. So anytime you can gamify something that improves your brain, you know, you're onto a hit.
Well, lots of teachers use word search puzzles to teach vocabulary, and it
Hmm.
teaches vocabulary through many different ages. So it's actually a really great educational tool. So I have
Yeah.
a burning question for you because you're
What's that?
Mr. Memory. So what's the difference between the brain and the memory, and do they interlock someplace, or are they two separate things?
Oh no, no, your brain and your memory are very much hand in hand. There is some interesting theories about consciousness going beyond the brain. You know, that there may actually be discoverable a mind, if you will, that is beyond the brain. Not necessarily talking about psychic powers, but it may be that your nervous system throughout your entire body actually helps you do some of your thinking and your conscious awareness. And there's interesting things down that direction. But when it comes to memory, we actually really know one of the you know the key factors of memory loss, and it's your hippocampus. Essentially, the kind of the center. If you draw a center point here and here and here and here, it's kind of at the center of your brain. That it appears as though, at least this is the current theory, but of course the theories are in debate, but it appears as though all the information that we take in through all of our senses kind of goes to this little processing center, and if something's wrong with that area, it can change everything. And of course, if something, you know, works at a hyper efficiency in that area, you can have hyper brain as well, and hyper memory. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it's the same thing about where the memories are stored, and sometimes somebody can get a head injury, as you know, and they can forget entire periods of their life. Sometimes there can be head injuries where people will forget long-term memory, but they'll only be able to hold on to short-term memory. So it's actually like with all of these little, you know, injuries, we're actually learning more and more about the brain, but we don't really know if that injury, let's say, is blocking a memory because that's where the memory is stored, or if that trauma interferes with the storage mechanism somewhere else as well. You know, like, so there's a lot of assumptions that used to be made that are getting debunked over time. And I think it's safe to say that the more we actually learn, the less we realize we actually know for sure. And there's a lot of assumptions made, but it's a wonderful, exciting pursuit. If people are interested in brain science and neuroscience, I mean, there are some great courses out there that I could direct you to. But I will say this though, as one point that I want to make really popular is just like we were talking about with the rest of these puzzles, your memory really gets affected by the habits that you do. So if you have to memorize something on a regular basis, you're going to be sharper. In fact, even there's a lot of studies with people even after 50, 60 plus who were made to go through memory tests, and their brain got better at them as they went along. So it's not as tied to age as a lot of people assume. A lot of it is really lifestyle. It's kind of use it or lose it is my best example. And don't
Well,
lose it. Keep using it.
Yeah, but you really know of what you speak, because isn't it 59 different card decks all mixed together that you memorized? What was your world
Yeah, yeah.
record
For my
breaking
Guinness
thing?
record, I memorized 59 decks of cards all shuffled together. That's 3,068 cards in total, and I only missed one out of all the 59 decks of cards. Only missed one card, by the way, not a whole deck. It was yeah, deck number 17, card number 45, and I got the number right, but I didn't get the suit right, and I was marked wrong for that, but it was well within the margin for the Guinness Book of Records, and it hasn't been broken since. It's actually that was the second time I broke that record, and it hasn't been broken since. So it's stood the test of time. But I really did that not for my own ego. I did that to show people what was possible with the brain, especially me, diagnosed with ADHD when I was a kid, going to that level. I just wanted it to inspire people. Of course, I wanted to, market my course and get that attention out there. But really, it was kind of like a challenge to prove that you can shape the brain, change the brain with exercises and training, and reach even world-class levels.
And that's called neuroplasticity. And for a long time, it was thought, this is one of the brain things that's been debunked. For the longest time, people thought if your brain was injured or you had some trauma, that was it. You weren't going to get your brain back. However, science has gone on to prove it, as well as Dave Farrow, that you can train your brain and retrain it. And it's the inherent neuroplasticity of your brain, which means that if you train it and educate it, then you can learn it and you can keep it.
And it
right?
will grow. Yeah, your brain actually changes itself based on your habits. And I would also say cognitive reserve is another really exciting area of study to look up. If somebody wants to Google that, it has to do with how training your brain and exercising your brain as you get older gives you a reserve against dementia. That is, you can actually even get dementia. There's many cases of people who have Alzheimer's and then have been able to minimize or even reverse the symptoms of it. And then, they pass away. The only way to tell for sure if somebody has Alzheimer's is with an autopsy. So they, consented to an autopsy and found that they were living with it the whole time. But because they had a low stress environment and a lot of brain training, they reversed the symptoms. There's a lot of great studies. There's a nun study that got on the cover of Time magazine that showed that. But actually, you're not that far off when you say that. I proved it too, because I remember back, I was in my 20s after I broke my Guinness record, and I was doing tons of radio interviews. This was when people listened to radio, and for you young people out there, radio was something that they used to listen to over there. It's like a podcast, but it was broadcast live. That's the best way I could say it. So, and literally, you do have to describe it. But all joking aside, I was actually I was pushing for brain plasticity back when they had the hardwired brain model, and it was an uphill battle. I literally had neuroscientists, some very big names, tell me that I was being irresponsible by telling people that brain plasticity existed and I should stop what I was doing, and they wanted to attack me and stuff. And then but really that was just one of the, academia has a lot of great aspects to it. Science has a lot of great aspects, but there is kind of an institutionalism to it where when an idea is wrong, but it's accepted by the majority of people within that science, it takes a long time and a lot of data to get everyone to change their mind. And some would say some people have to leave the field, and new exciting blood has to get into the field in order for them to change these preconceived notions. It all started back when people looked at just cellular theory. They would take nerve cells from someone's brain, put them in a petri dish and look at them, and they would never divide like other cells would divide. Just about every other cell in your body would, but the nerve cells wouldn't. And they wondered, well, that means that you're only born with so many and you never get any more for the rest of your life. Little did they know that there was actually a whole bunch of discoveries made since then. Pockets of stem cells inside your brain that can replace damaged areas or can pop up. Also, the nerve cells themselves, although they don't divide, they can change the number of connections they have to other cells. They can like reach out these arms and then pull them back, depending on things. So these cells can be so adaptive. They don't have to divide. Your brain doesn't have to get bigger. That would be a bad thing, but it definitely does change over time. And that's just something that, we didn't know back then, but it's absolutely unequivocally known right now that, yeah, brain training can make a big difference. One of the most exciting areas are stroke victims. If you've had a stroke, or you know somebody who has had a stroke, it is not a death sentence anymore. In fact, it's almost a common occurrence to get into some sort of training program. Now, it is something you got to do, you know, let's say every day for like 6 months. You got to do something that gets your brain back to where it was. And by the way, if you don't do it within a certain period of time, there is some belief that you'll be, you know, it'll kind of get more rigid and you'll be stuck there. There is a higher plasticity zone. So you know, anybody who is dealing with head injury or stroke or something like that, don't get depressed, get excited, but also get pretty motivated to get moving, because those brain training exercises really make a difference. They're not a waste of time. They're not just a leisure activity. This is not just a leisure activity anymore. This is medicine for some people.
Well, that and also moving so that you activate both sides of your body. Like I know people with stroke victims and brain injuries, they do labyrinth walks, they do cross crawling, they do things that activate all different sides to the best of their abilities, however they can move.
I would actually suggest juggling. Juggling is one of the best ones I've ever seen, especially if you don't know how to juggle. It'll really help strengthen your brain. And it's a good, fun party trick to be able to do. I can juggle quite well for fun, you know? And also, you know, there's things like brushing your teeth with the wrong hand and things like that. But I haven't really heard a lot of people follow through on that, because it's really frustrating to try to write with the wrong hand. It's something you do for fun for a little while, but juggling at least, or playing the yo-yo, or you know, something like that. Yo-yo is a good one. There's a famous case of a yo-yo expert that recovered from stroke by just learning all his yo-yo tricks again.
Oh, wow.
But it's a physical activity, like I said, or learning how to dance or play a musical instrument, but something that you're passionate about that'll keep you going.
Exactly. Learn something new every day and have fun doing it, right? That's the
Absolutely.
bottom
Learn
line.
something new every day.
Well, cool. So Dave, we talked about any other kinds of puzzles you really like to do that we haven't talked about?
Well, I really like logic puzzles, actually. In fact, my wife and I, we love puzzles in general. We have kind of a tradition. We don't do this every time, but it's a tradition in our household just about every time, where when one of us has when we have a birthday or a special occasion or something, we'll have clues that will help you find where your present is. And the clue will be some sort of cipher or something. I've done some pretty extensive ones, like a side tale and you know, different like, you know, geocaching and stuff like that. And really, it's the puzzle is half the gift, right? Today we do, you know, escape rooms as well for fun, and it's just, you know, we just love, you know, stretching our brain. And I think one of the biggest things about this is I think people are afraid to do this because they're afraid to, you know, look dumb or make mistakes or anything. And the fact is, anybody who's good at this sort of stuff has made thousands more mistakes than you have. That's basically how you get good. So nobody who is really good at puzzles will ever look down on you for being a novice, because they were there. They know what it's like. I don't think there's anybody who comes out of the womb just great at puzzles. It really is like you gotta figure out how puzzles work in general, no matter how smart you are, and then it becomes a, you know, a fun activity. I suggest everybody does it with their family, their kids, everybody.
Oh yeah, and it's kind of silly, and this is kind of a societal shame, is you get shamed for not knowing how to do something you've never done before. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think we should shame people who don't try. You know, it's like, oh, shame on you for not having the guts to give it a shot. You know, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, give these a shot. These 60 amazing puzzles with super duper fun hidden messages. Yoga for the Brain, Dave Farrow's amazing forward that talks about brain teasers and puzzles. And in between all the chapters, I mean, in between all the puzzles, I write some chapters which are the profound philosophy part. So you get a lot of goodness in this simple little puzzle book. You can pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Target.com, and you can walk into a bookstore and ask for it by name. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.
Pleasure. Take care.
Bye.